The calm before the storm. In a small town on the outskirts of a bustling city, life went on as usual. Children played in the streets, their laughter echoing against the warm summer air. Adults went about their daily routines, sipping coffee at local cafes and chatting about the latest news. It was a peaceful morning, but deep in the heart of Earth, something stirred that would soon change everything. Commander Sarah Reynolds stood on the balcony of her office, looking out at the horizon. She was a dedicated leader, known for her sharp mind and unwavering resolve. With her short brown hair and piercing blue eyes, she often inspired her team to reach new heights. But today, something felt off. A sense of unease hung in the air, almost as if the world was holding its breath. Sarah had received a message from her team, a small group of scientists and engineers working at a nearby research facility. They had detected a strange signal from deep space, unlike anything they had encountered before. At first, Sarah dismissed it as another harmless cosmic phenomenon, but her instincts told her to investigate further. "Jake, what do you make of this signal?" she asked, turning to her lead engineer, Jake Thompson. Jake was a young man with a passion for technology and a knack for problem-solving. He had a friendly demeanor and was well-liked by everyone on the team. "I'm not sure, Commander," Jake replied, looking at the data on his tablet. "The frequency is fluctuating, and it seems to be getting stronger. It almost feels intentional." Sarah raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Intentional? Are you suggesting it's a message?" "It's possible," Jake said, his eyes brightening with excitement. "If it is, we need to figure out who or what is trying to communicate with us." Sarah nodded, her mind racing. "Let's gather the team and discuss our options. We need to take this seriously." Within an hour, the small conference room was filled with her closest team members. They included Dr. Emily Park, an astrophysicist with a brilliant mind, and Captain Mark Lee, a seasoned pilot with years of experience. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation as they sat around the table. "Thank you all for coming," Sarah began. "We've received a signal from deep space that seems to be increasing in intensity. Jake believes it could be a deliberate message." Emily leaned forward, her curiosity piqued. "What do we know about the source?" Jake tapped his tablet, projecting the signal data onto the screen. It originated from a region of space known as the Abyssal Sector. There's very little information available about that area, but it's rumored to be home to ancient technologies. The room fell silent as the weight of his words sank in. Captain Mark crossed his arms, skepticism evident on his face. "The Abyssal Sector. That's a dangerous place. We should be cautious. If it's a message, it could be a trap." Sarah considered his words carefully. "We cannot ignore this. We need to learn more. If there's a chance it's a cry for help or a warning, we owe it to ourselves to investigate." Emily nodded in agreement. "If we don't act, we might miss an opportunity to understand something truly remarkable." Mark sighed, but eventually relented. "All right, I'll prepare the ship for a reconnaissance mission, but we need to be ready for anything." With the decision made, the team sprang into action. They gathered their equipment and prepared for a journey into the unknown. As Sarah walked through the facility, she felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. What lay ahead could change everything they knew about the universe. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow across the landscape, the team boarded their ship, the SS Horizon. The vessel was a sleek, advanced spacecraft designed for deep space exploration. As they settled into their seats, Sarah could feel the energy in the air, a buzz of anticipation and trepidation. "Ready for launch," Jake announced, his fingers dancing across the controls. The engines hummed to life, and the ship shook slightly as it prepared for takeoff. "Engaging launch sequence," Mark said, his voice steady. "Hold on tight, everyone." The ship soared into the sky, leaving behind the familiar comforts of Earth. As they broke through the atmosphere, the vastness of space unfolded before them, stars twinkling like diamonds against the deep black canvas. It was a beautiful sight, but Sarah felt a nagging sense of foreboding in her gut. After hours of traveling, they finally reached the abyssal sector. The ship's systems began to register unusual readings. The signal was stronger now, pulsing like a heartbeat. "Captain, we're entering the signal's range," Jake reported, his voice tense with concentration. "I've pinpointed its source. It's coming from a derelict ship floating just ahead." Sarah's heart raced as she looked at the screen. The ship was unlike anything they had ever seen, with dark, jagged edges and an ominous aura. "What do you think it is?" "Only one way to find out," Mark said, determination etched on his face. As they approached the derelict ship, the atmosphere inside the SS Horizon shifted. The crew exchanged worried glances, their earlier excitement giving way to uncertainty. What had they awakened in the darkness of space? With their hearts pounding, they prepared to board the mysterious vessel, unaware that their actions would soon lead to a battle for the fate of humanity. The calm before the storm was over. The real fight was just beginning. Echoes of the past. The SS Horizon drifted silently alongside the derelict ship, its dark hull absorbing the faint light of distant stars. The crew sat in tense silence, the hum of the ship's engines the only sound breaking the stillness. Commander Sarah Reynolds took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. "Jake, can you access any systems on that ship?" Sarah asked, her voice steady despite the unease settling in her stomach. "Trying now," Jake replied, fingers flying over his console. The screens flickered, showing static before stabilizing. "I'm getting some readings, but they're strange. The systems are partially online, but it looks like a lot of it has been damaged or shut down." "Can you identify the ship's origin?" Emily chimed in, her curiosity piqued. Jake's brow furrowed as he analyzed the data. "It's definitely not human. The architecture is too complex, almost organic. But there's something familiar about it." He hesitated, then added, "It resembles ships from the Zilloran Empire, an ancient alien civilization known for their advanced technology." "Zilloran Empire," Mark echoed, skepticism in his tone. "That's just a myth. No one's seen evidence of their existence in centuries." "I thought so too, but we're looking at an actual ship," Sarah said, her eyes narrowing. "If this is a Zilloran vessel, we need to approach it with caution. We have no idea what kind of technology, or dangers, might be aboard." After a few moments of silence, Sarah made her decision. "Jake, prepare a boarding party. We'll need to investigate further. Emily, gather the necessary equipment. Mark, you're in charge of security." As they geared up for the mission, tension filled the air. They donned their suits, which were designed to protect them from the vacuum of space and any potential hazards they might encounter. Sarah glanced at her team, taking a moment to appreciate their determination. Each of them had trained for years to face the unknown, but now they were stepping into a realm where the rules of the universe could be rewritten. Once prepared, they boarded a smaller shuttle, a compact vessel designed for short-range travel. The shuttle's engines roared to life, and they detached from the horizon, gliding towards the dark ship. Sarah piloted the shuttle, her hands steady on the controls, while Jake and Emily monitored the ship's systems. "Approaching the airlock now," Sarah announced, her voice echoing inside the shuttle. The derelict ship loomed closer, its exterior covered in grime and damage, as if it had been drifting in space for centuries. "Activating the docking sequence," Jake said, his focus unwavering. "Let's hope this airlock still works." With a hiss, the airlock opened, revealing a dark corridor lined with unfamiliar symbols and textures. The sight sent chills down Sarah's spine. They stepped into the ship, the air inside thick with dust and the remnants of ancient technology. "Keep your eyes peeled," Mark said, scanning the surroundings. "We don't know what might be lurking in here." As they ventured deeper into the ship, the dim lighting illuminated strange machinery, twisted and broken. Sarah's heart raced with excitement and fear. What secrets lay hidden in this ancient vessel? Suddenly, Emily stopped in her tracks. "Wait, I think I found something," she said, pointing to a console partially covered in debris. It flickered to life as she approached, illuminating the symbols around them. "What is it?" Sarah asked, stepping closer. "It appears to be a control." Jake joined her, squinting at the screen. "Maybe I can help. I've been studying alien languages for years." He leaned over, tapping the panel gently. With a few strokes, the display shifted, and images began to flicker on the screen. The images depicted a grand starship, sleek and powerful, moving through the stars. But then, the scenes turned darker. Battles against strange forces, explosions, and chaos. Sarah felt a shiver run down her spine as she watched. "It looks like they were fighting something," Mark said, his voice low. "Something dangerous." The display shifted again, revealing a group of Zilorans, tall, elegant beings with shimmering skin and large, expressive eyes. They were shown working together, desperately trying to protect their ship from an unseen enemy. But then, their faces twisted in fear as a shadow loomed over them, and the image went dark. "What happened to them?" Emily asked, her voice trembling. "Did they lose?" "I don't know," Jake said, stepping back from the console. "But whatever they faced must have been terrifying." Suddenly, the ship shuddered, the walls vibrating as an alarm blared. Red lights flashed, and the console flickered wildly. "Something's wrong," Mark shouted, his eyes wide. "We need to get out of here." "Jake, can you shut it down?" Sarah yelled, adrenaline coursing through her veins. "I'm trying," he replied, furiously tapping at the controls. "But I can't." Before he could finish, the ship lurched violently, throwing them against the walls. The alarms grew louder, and the lights flickered dangerously. They had awoken something. "Everyone, back to the shuttle," Sarah ordered, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Move." They scrambled through the corridors, the ship's tremors intensifying. Shadows flickered in the corners of their vision, and Sarah could feel her heart pounding in her chest. What had they unleashed? As they reached the airlock, they could hear the distant sound of machinery starting to whir to life. The ship was awakening, and it wasn't happy. "Get us out of here," Mark shouted as they climbed into the shuttle. Jake frantically initiated the launch sequence, sweat beading on his forehead. The shuttle's engines roared to life as the airlock closed behind them. They shot away from the derelict ship, the chaos of the moment swallowing them. As they ascended, Sarah glanced back at the ancient vessel, now pulsating with energy. Whatever they had disturbed was not going to let them leave easily. "We need to regroup and figure out what just happened," she said, trying to steady her racing thoughts. "But we have to be prepared. The Abyssal Armada has awoken, and we might be their only hope in this battle." With those words, a sense of resolve filled the crew. They would not back down. They were humanity, and they were ready to fight against the shadows that threatened to consume them all. Shadows of the Abyss. Back aboard the SS Horizon, the atmosphere was tense. The crew gathered in the command center, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of the control panels. Sarah stood at the front, her hands clasped tightly together, gathering her thoughts. "All right, team," she began, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside her. "We've encountered something much bigger than we anticipated. The ship we found is connected to the Abyssal Armada, a force we believed was nothing more than a myth." Jake shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his brow furrowed. "But what does that mean for us? Are we really in danger?" "It means we have to be on high alert," Sarah replied, looking around the room at her crew. "If the Abyssal Armada has awakened, we might not have much time. We need to understand what they are capable of." Emily, her fingers dancing over the control panel, interrupted. "I managed to extract some data from the Ziloran ship's console before we left. It contains records of their battles and the enemies they faced. If we can decipher it, we might get a clearer picture of what we're dealing with." "Good work, Emily," Sarah said, appreciating her effort. "Let's start there. Jake, help her analyze the data. Mark, I want you to run a scan of the surrounding area. We need to be prepared for anything. As the team worked, Sarah's thoughts drifted back to the Zilloran ship. What had happened to its crew? Why had they been fighting? There were so many unanswered questions, and the weight of them pressed heavily on her chest. Hours passed as the crew delved deeper into the data. Emily and Jake deciphered images and records of previous conflicts, revealing the brutal nature of the Abyssal Armada. Each entry painted a picture of destruction. Worlds consumed, civilizations eradicated. The crew grew increasingly uneasy. Finally, Emily looked up, her expression grave. "Commander, I think I've found something important. The Abyssal Armada isn't just a military force. They seem to be driven by a hunger for power. They devour technology and knowledge, assimilating it into their own." "Assimilation," Mark echoed, his voice low. "Are you saying they can absorb our technology?" "Exactly," Emily replied, her eyes wide. "And the data suggests they have a weakness, a specific frequency it can disrupt their systems. If we can harness it, we might be able to protect ourselves or even turn their own technology against them." Sarah nodded, her mind racing with possibilities. "Then we need to gather everything we can about this frequency. It might be our only chance in a fight against them." Just then, an alarm blared, jolting the crew back to reality. Red lights flashed around them, and the ship shook violently. "Status report," Sarah barked, her heart racing. "Detecting multiple ships approaching rapidly," Mark shouted, his fingers flying over the controls. "It's the Abyssal Armada. They're here." "Jake, get us out of here," Sarah ordered, her voice firm. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers." The ship lurched as Jake piloted the horizon, attempting to escape the incoming threat. The view outside the window filled with the dark silhouettes of massive ships, each one more terrifying than the last. The Abyssal Armada had arrived. As they broke free from the gravitational pull of a nearby planet, Sarah felt a mix of fear and determination wash over her. "We can't outrun them forever. We need a plan," she said, glancing at her team. "Can we engage the emergency thrusters?" Emily suggested, her eyes darting to the controls. "It might give us enough time to prepare." "Yes, do it," Sarah replied. "But we need to stay hidden until we can devise a strategy." Jake activated the emergency thrusters, and the ship surged forward. They weaved through the asteroids, using the debris as cover. The abyssal ships pursued, their dark forms ominous against the backdrop of the stars. "Commander, I'm detecting a weak signal coming from one of the abyssal ships," Mark called out, his voice tense. "It looks like they're trying to communicate. Maybe we can intercept their transmissions." "Can you decrypt it?" Sarah asked, her mind racing with possibilities. "I'll try," Mark responded, his fingers flying over the console. The room fell silent as they waited, the tension palpable. After a few moments, Mark's expression shifted from concentration to surprise. I think I can understand some of it. They're discussing us. They're aware of the horizon and seem intrigued by our technology." "What do they want?" Sarah asked, feeling a chill run down her spine. "They're debating whether to engage us directly or to analyze our systems further," Mark replied, a hint of fear in his voice. "If they choose to analyze, we could be in serious trouble." "Then we need to act fast," Sarah said, her resolve hardening. "Jake, keep us on the move. Emily, let's work on amplifying that frequency. We need to be ready for whatever they decide." As they continued to evade the pursuing ships, Sarah felt the weight of their situation. The Abyssal Armada was not just a story from ancient lore. They were a real threat, and they had come for humanity. In that moment, she understood that they were no longer just a crew on a mission. They were humanity's last line of defense. With the fate of their species hanging in the balance, they would have to rise to the occasion. "Prepare for battle," Sarah commanded, her voice steady. "We fight for our survival, and we fight for humanity." With those words echoing in their minds, the crew readied themselves for the fight of their lives. The shadows of the abyss loomed closer, but they were ready to face whatever came their way. The abyssal encounter. The tension aboard the SS Horizon was almost palpable as the crew prepared for the impending confrontation. Each member was focused, determined to defend their home. Sarah stood at the command console, her eyes scanning the view of the dark void outside. The silhouettes of the abyssal armada loomed closer, an ominous reminder of the threat they faced. "Jake, maintain our course. Don't let them get a fix on us," Sarah ordered, her voice calm yet commanding. "Copy that, Commander," Jake replied, gripping the controls tightly. The ship shook as it veered around an asteroid, narrowly escaping the sight of the abyssal ships. Emily and Mark worked furiously at their stations, analyzing the data they had collected. "I'm almost ready with the frequency modulator," Emily said, her brow furrowed in concentration. "If we can amplify the signal, we might be able to disrupt their systems temporarily." "Let me know when you're ready," Sarah said, glancing over her shoulder. "We don't have much time before they realize we're here." Suddenly, the ship jolted again, and an alarm blared. "They've locked onto us," Mark shouted, his fingers racing over the console. "They're preparing to fire." "Evasive maneuvers, Jake," Sarah yelled. "Get us out of here." Jake twisted the ship sharply, narrowly avoiding a volley of energy blasts that tore through the space where they had just been. The bright beams of light illuminated the darkness, a terrifying reminder of the power of their adversaries. "Now," Emily shouted, just as the ship lurched again. "I've got the frequency modulator ready." "Activate it," Sarah commanded, her heart racing as the abyssal ships closed in. "Now." With a flick of a switch, Emily activated the device. A pulse of energy surged from the horizon, creating a wave that rippled through space. The energy resonated at the specific frequency they had discovered, targeting the abyssal ships. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the nearest abyssal ship shuddered violently. Its weapon systems flickered and dimmed. The crew aboard the Horizon watched in awe as confusion erupted among the abyssal armada. Some ships began to drift, their systems malfunctioning. "It's working," Mark shouted, his eyes wide with excitement. "They're losing control." "Keep the frequency steady, Emily," Sarah urged. "We need to maximize the effect." As the crew maintained the pulse, the Horizon darted among the debris, using asteroids as cover. The chaos among the abyssal ships was palpable. Some began firing at one another, unable to distinguish friend from foe. "Should we take advantage of their confusion?" Jake asked, glancing at Sarah. "We need to stay cautious," she replied, her voice steady. "Let's observe for a moment. We don't want to get caught up in their crossfire." Suddenly, a massive abyssal ship emerged from the shadows, its dark hull glistening menacingly against the starlit background. The vessel was enormous, dwarfing the horizon, and as it approached, the crew felt a wave of dread wash over them. "They're regrouping," Mark shouted, pointing at the screens. "They're going to launch a counterattack." "Jake, maneuver us behind that asteroid," Sarah ordered, her heart racing. "We need to give Emily time to refine the frequency." As they ducked behind a rocky outcrop, the ship shook as another volley of energy blasts rocketed past, narrowly missing them. The crew held their breath, eyes wide as they waited for the abyssal ships to come into view. "Emily, how long until the modulator is ready again?" Sarah asked, her voice tense. "Just a few more moments," Emily replied, sweat glistening on her forehead as she focused intently. "I need to recalibrate it for the new targets." Suddenly, the Horizon lurched again. "They're firing again," Jake yelled, barely managing to keep the ship steady. "We need to get out of here." "Now," Sarah shouted, her heart pounding. "We can't let them pin us down." As they broke free from the asteroid's cover, the crew's eyes widened in horror. The massive abyssal ship had launched an attack, and the energy blasts were racing toward them. "Emily, now," Sarah urged. "Activate it." With a surge of energy, Emily activated the modulator again, sending out a concentrated burst of the frequency. The powerful wave hit the nearest abyssal ship, causing its weapons to malfunction. Direct hit. Mark cheered, but the moment was short-lived. The colossal ship had its sights on the horizon now. "They're targeting us," Jake shouted, his voice laced with panic. "We can't outrun it." "Brace for impact," Sarah commanded, her heart pounding as she gripped the console. She had to stay focused to lead her crew. With a deafening roar, the abyssal ship unleashed its firepower. The horizon shook violently as the blast struck, lights flickering around them. "Status report," Sarah shouted, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Shields holding at 50%. Mark reported, but we're taking damage to the aft section." "Jake, take us into the asteroid field," Sarah commanded. "We can use the rocks as cover." As they maneuvered through the dense field of asteroids, Sarah felt a surge of determination. The crew was fighting for their lives, and she knew they could prevail. The abyssal armada had awakened, but humanity would not go down without a fight. "Hold steady," she shouted, adrenaline pumping through her veins. "We're not done yet." As they plunged deeper into the asteroid field, dodging and weaving between the rocky outcrops, Sarah and her crew prepared for the battle ahead. They would face the abyssal armada head-on, and they would fight for their survival. The heart of the storm. The SS Horizon maneuvered through the asteroid field, weaving between the massive rocks that floated silently in the void. The tension in the ship was high, and each crew member was acutely aware of the precarious situation they found themselves in. Sarah remained at the command console, her eyes glued to the screens, scanning for any signs of the abyssal ships. "Jake, keep us low and out of sight," she ordered, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "We need to avoid detection while Emily finishes recalibrating the modulator." "Yes, Commander," Jake replied, his hands deftly guiding the ship through a narrow gap between two asteroids. The ship rocked slightly as they navigated the turbulent field, but Jake's skill kept them steady. Emily was at her station, sweat beading on her forehead as she focused on her work. "I'm almost done," she called out. "Just need to adjust the modulation for the larger abyssal ships." Mark monitored the sensors, his expression serious. "I can't get a precise lock on their positions. They're still scrambling, but it looks like they're regrouping outside the asteroid field. We'll need to act fast before they figure out where we are." "Let them regroup," Sarah said, her voice calm and commanding. "We'll use that to our advantage. Once we're ready, we'll strike them while they're disoriented." The ship jolted suddenly, and alarms blared as an energy pulse passed perilously close to the horizon. "Jake," Sarah yelled, bracing herself against the console. "Get us deeper into the field." "They're onto us." "I'm trying." Jake gritted his teeth as he pushed the ship to its limits, navigating through the dense maze of asteroids. The horizon shuddered as another pulse of energy grazed the hull, the lights flickering ominously. "Emily, how's it going back there?" Sarah asked, her eyes darting between the displays. "I'm almost there," Emily shouted, her fingers flying over the controls. "Just a little more time." With every second that passed, the pressure mounted. Sarah could feel the weight of her crew's hopes resting on her shoulders. She couldn't let them down. Suddenly, a message blinked on the main screen, indicating a large gathering of abyssal ships outside the field. "They're forming up," Mark exclaimed, eyes wide with alarm. "Looks like they're preparing to strike." "Emily," Sarah called, urgency creeping into her voice. "We need that modulator now." "I'm ready," Emily shouted, a note of triumph breaking through her tension. "Just give me the signal." "Now," Sarah commanded, her heart racing. As Emily activated the frequency modulator, a powerful wave of energy surged from the horizon. It shot out into space, colliding with the nearest abyssal ship. The crew watched as the ship shook violently, its systems failing under the unexpected assault. "Yes, it's working," Mark cheered, a smile breaking through the tension. But just as they celebrated, the massive abyssal ship that had previously fired at them turned its attention toward their location. "They're firing back," Jake shouted, panic rising in his voice. "Evasive maneuvers," Sarah commanded, gripping her console tightly. The horizon veered sharply, dodging a torrent of energy blasts that lit up the darkness like fireworks. "Stay focused," Sarah urged her crew. "We've come too far to back down now." As they danced through the asteroid field, the crew felt a surge of hope. They were holding their ground against the abyssal armada, pushing back against the tide of despair. "We can't keep this up forever," Jake said, sweat pouring down his face as he maneuvered the ship. "They're going to figure out our pattern." "Then let's change it up," Sarah replied, her mind racing. "Mark, can you track their firing patterns?" "Working on it," Mark said, eyes glued to the sensors. "I'll try to predict their next move." "Emily, can you amplify the modulator signal?" Sarah asked, her heart racing. "If we hit them hard enough, we might create a window to escape." "I can try," Emily replied, fingers flying over the console. "But I'll need a few seconds." "Then we'll buy you those seconds," Sarah declared. "Jake, keep us moving. Don't give them a clear shot." As Jake swerved and dodged, Sarah kept an eye on the displays. The abyssal ships were closing in, but their movements were becoming erratic. Mark was working hard to track their firing patterns. "They're getting frustrated," Mark shouted. "They're firing blind now." "Emily, now," Sarah commanded. Emily pressed the button, sending another wave of energy surging toward the enemy ships. This time, the effect was amplified. The shockwaves spread like ripples in a pond, hitting multiple ships at once. "Yes, look at them," Mark cheered as several abyssal vessels lost control, colliding with one another in a chaotic display of destruction. "Keep it going, Emily," Sarah urged. "We need to keep the pressure on." With every pulse of energy, they disrupted the abyssal armada's coordination. The crew felt a new surge of confidence, a sense that they could turn the tide of this battle. Suddenly, alarms blared again, indicating an incoming threat. "They're regrouping," Jake shouted, his face pale with concern. "We need to retreat," Mark yelled. "We've caused enough chaos. It's time to regroup." "No," Sarah said firmly. "We can't let this moment go to waste. We have them on the ropes. If we strike hard now, we can weaken them significantly." As she spoke, Sarah's mind raced with strategy. They had the upper hand for the moment, and she wouldn't let that slip away. "Jake, let's move in closer," she ordered. "We can target their flagship. If we take that down, we can scatter the rest." "Are you sure about this?" Jake asked, glancing nervously at the screens. "Absolutely," Sarah replied, her voice steady. "This is our moment. We have to seize it." The crew exchanged determined glances, and one by one, they nodded. They would follow her lead. "Full speed ahead," Sarah commanded. With renewed determination, the horizon surged forward, heading straight toward the heart of the abyssal armada. The crew was ready to face whatever came next, knowing they were fighting not just for their survival, but for the future of humanity. The battle was far from over, but they were ready to meet it head-on. The tides turned. The SS Horizon surged forward, dodging errant blasts from the confused abyssal armada. Sarah stood firm at the command console, her heart pounding with both fear and exhilaration. She could feel the weight of her crew's hopes resting on her shoulders, but that burden only fueled her determination. They had come this far. They couldn't turn back now. "Jake, keep us steady," Sarah commanded as the ship shuddered from near misses. "We need to get a clear shot at their flagship." "I'm on it," Jake replied, his knuckles white as he gripped the controls. The ship maneuvered through the wreckage of the damaged abyssal vessels, a cacophony of explosions echoing around them. "Mark, where's the flagship?" Sarah asked, glancing over her shoulder at him. "Scanning now," Mark's fingers flew across his console. It's at the center of the formation, trying to regroup the remaining ships. If we can take it out, we'll scatter the rest like leaves in the wind. Emily, how's the modulator holding up? Sarah turned back to Emily, who was focused intently on her display. It's still active, but I'll need a few moments to recharge for another big blast, Emily said, beads of sweat glistening on her forehead. We have to make this count. Just give us a little more time, Sarah replied, her heart racing. We need to keep them distracted until you're ready. As they approached the flagship, the chaos around them intensified. Abyssal ships were starting to react, firing wildly at the horizon as they realized the threat. Here they come, Jake shouted, the ship bucking slightly under the force of incoming blasts. We can't take too many hits. Just hold together, Sarah urged, her voice steady. We're almost there. Mark glanced at the sensors. They're still confused. We've disrupted their communication lines. Just a little more, and we'll have the advantage. The flagship loomed large ahead, its dark silhouette framed against the glow of distant stars. Sarah felt a mix of dread and determination as they closed in. Now, Jake, bring us in, Sarah shouted. With deft movements, Jake angled the ship, bringing them closer to the flagship's underbelly. I've got a lock, he yelled, adrenaline coursing through him. Ready to fire whenever you are. Emily, how's that recharge? Sarah asked, urgency creeping into her voice. Just a few more seconds, Emily called back, her hands flying across her console. Suddenly, the flagship's cannon swiveled toward them, ready to unleash destruction. Get ready to evade, Jake shouted, his eyes wide with panic. Hold your ground, Sarah ordered. We have to trust in our plan. As the flagship fired, Sarah's heart raced. Now, Emily, fire the modulator. Emily hit the button just as the flagship's shots blasted toward them. The horizon shook violently, but in that moment, a wave of energy burst forth from the ship, colliding directly with the flagship's core. Direct hit, Mark cheered, but the celebration was short-lived as the horizon rocked under the force of the flagship's return fire. Steady, steady, Jake cried out, pulling back on the controls. The energy from the modulator exploded outward, and for a moment, everything was silent. The flagship's lights flickered, and then a massive explosion erupted from its center, sending debris flying in all directions. Yes, we did it, Emily shouted, tears of relief streaming down her face. But the moment of victory was quickly overshadowed by the realization that the remaining abyssal ships were turning their focus on them. Jake, we need to get out of here, Sarah yelled, adrenaline spiking again. Now. On it, Jake pulled the ship into a sharp turn, but before they could escape, a nearby abyssal ship fired a volley of shots, hitting the horizon hard. The ship shuddered violently, alarms blaring as systems began to fail. We've taken damage, Mark shouted, his voice tinged with panic. Power levels are dropping. Get the engines back online, Sarah ordered. We can't let them trap us. Emily scrambled to her station, her fingers flying over the controls. I'm trying, but the energy output is fluctuating. We need to stabilize the core. Then stabilize it, Sarah replied, urgency in her voice. We have to move. Jake gritted his teeth, trying to navigate through the chaos. I'll do my best, but we're not going to last long out here. Just hold on, Sarah shouted, determination in her voice. We can't give up now. As the horizon weaved through the chaos, the crew fought against the odds. Every blast that struck them sent jolts of fear through their bodies, but they refused to back down. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Emily shouted, I've got the core stable. We can move again. Let's go, Sarah commanded, heart racing as they surged forward, narrowly avoiding another blast from an abyssal ship. With a final burst of speed, the horizon rocketed away from the battle, leaving behind the remnants of the flagship and the confusion of the abyssal armada. "We did it!" Mark exclaimed, a wave of relief washing over him. As they flew into the depths of space, Sarah took a deep breath, the adrenaline slowly fading. They had faced the abyssal threat head-on and come out the other side, but the battle was far from over. "Let's regroup and plan our next move," she said, determination settling over her once more. "We still have a fight ahead of us." With renewed purpose, the crew of the SS Horizon prepared to face whatever challenges awaited them in the depths of space. Together, they would continue to fight for their survival, ready to stand against the darkness that threatened humanity. The final stand. The SS Horizon drifted silently in the void of space, the battle fading into the distance. Yet, within the ship, tension hung heavy in the air. The crew had survived the onslaught, but they knew that the abyssal armada would not give up easily. Sarah stood at the command console, scanning the sensors for any sign of the enemy. The display flickered with images of the wreckage from the recent battle, a stark reminder of how close they had come to defeat. "Jake, what's our status?" she asked, her voice steady. Jake was focused on his controls, a look of concentration etched on his face. "We're running low on fuel, and our weapons systems need repairs. It's going to take time to get everything back online," he replied, a hint of worry in his tone. "Time is something we may not have," Mark interjected, glancing at the screen displaying their last skirmish. "We took down the flagship, but the armada is regrouping. They'll come for us." Emily, her fingers nervously tapping on the console, chimed in. "If they come back in full force, we won't be able to fight them off without upgrades. We need to find a safe place to refuel and repair." Sarah nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "I'll contact the nearest base for assistance. Maybe they have resources we can use." As she worked, a chilling thought crossed her mind. What if the abyssal armada has already sent word to their other ships? What if we're already outnumbered? Before anyone could respond, the alarm on the ship blared to life. Mark's face paled as he shouted, "Incoming ships. Multiple signatures. They found us. Jake, we need to move now." Sarah commanded, adrenaline surging through her. "I'm trying." Jake's fingers danced across the controls, but the ship remained sluggish. "We've lost power to the engines. Emily, can you divert power from the shields?" Sarah urged. "I can try, but it will leave us vulnerable," Emily replied, sweat beading on her forehead. "Do it," Sarah ordered. "We need to escape." With a few quick taps, Emily rerouted power. The lights flickered, and the ship shuddered. The horizon roared to life again, but not without a price. The shields flickered and dimmed, leaving them exposed to the abyssal firepower. "Let's go," Jake yelled, steering the ship as best as he could. The horizon shot forward, narrowly avoiding a blast from an enemy ship. "Keep heading towards the asteroid belt," Sarah instructed. "We can lose them in there." "On it," Jake replied, determination fueling his every movement. As they entered the asteroid belt, the chaotic dance of rocks surrounded them. The crew worked together seamlessly, dodging incoming fire and navigating through the treacherous field. "Emily, how long until the engines are fully operational?" Sarah asked, her eyes glued to the scanner. "Just a few more minutes. I need to stabilize the power flow," Emily replied, fingers flying across her console. "Mark, keep an eye on R6, Sarah ordered. "We can't afford to be caught off guard." "I'm on it," Mark said, sweat trickling down his brow as he monitored the enemy's movements. The ship lurched violently as a blast connected with the rear. "We're taking damage," Jake shouted, fighting to keep the ship steady. "Hold on," Sarah cried, gripping the console as they twisted and turned, narrowly avoiding the debris. With each second that passed, Sarah could feel the tension building. The abyssal ships were relentless, firing shot after shot, but the horizon maneuvered expertly among the asteroids. "Almost there. Just a little longer," Emily shouted, her voice strained with effort. "Keep them off our backs," Sarah urged. Suddenly, An explosion rocked the ship, and the lights flickered. "The shields are down. We need to get out of here," Mark yelled. "Jake, turn us back toward the base," Sarah commanded. "We'll be sitting ducks out in the open," Jake protested. "It's our only chance," Sarah replied, determination in her voice. The ship turned sharply, and they blasted through the asteroid field, leaving chaos behind. The abyssal ships followed, but they were slowed by the obstacles. As they reached the edge of the belt, Sarah's heart raced. "Emily, any word on those engines?" "Now or never," Emily shouted as the engines roared back to life, sending the horizon surging forward. "Full speed ahead," Jake yelled, and the ship surged away from the asteroid belt, racing toward safety. But the abyssal ships were relentless. They fired, and a blast struck the horizon, sending it spinning. Alarms blared, and Sarah struggled to regain control. "Stabilizing," Jake shouted, fighting against the controls. "Mark, how close are they?" Sarah asked, fear creeping into her voice. "Too close," Mark replied, panic rising. "They'll catch us. Get us back to base," Sarah yelled, adrenaline fueling her resolve. The horizon surged ahead, the base's lights flickering on the horizon. Hope ignited in Sarah's chest. "Almost there," she shouted. "We can make it." As they approached the base, the abyssal ships fired one last barrage. "Brace for impact," Sarah cried, gripping the console tightly. The horizon rocked violently as shots hit the hull, but they were almost there. With a final surge of energy, they blasted through the docking bay, just as the shields collapsed. The crew tumbled forward as the ship screeched to a halt. They gasped for breath, the realization of their survival washing over them. "We made it," Emily cried, tears of relief streaming down her face. Sarah took a deep breath, looking at her crew with pride. "We did it together. We survived." But as the crew caught their breath, they knew the fight was far from over. The abyssal armada would regroup, and they would need to be ready. "Let's prepare for the next battle," Sarah said, determination blazing in her eyes. "We have a war to win." With their spirits lifted, the crew of the SS Horizon began to plan their next move, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, united and resolute in their fight for humanity's survival.